What would you do if the man everyone had given up on, silent, motionless, forgotten, suddenly whispered your name? Would you believe it was real or just a ghost of hope clinging to a broken body? This is the story of Olivia Hart, a young nurse who walked into a mansion filled with secrets and silence, and found a man the world thought was already dead inside. David Langston, once a powerful billionaire, now lay trapped in his own body, abandoned by the woman who vowed to love him and surrounded by people who were simply waiting for him to die. But Olivia saw something they didn't: a flicker, a tear, a whisper, and she made a choice that would change everything. If you think this is just a medical story, think again. What you're about to witness is a journey of courage, betrayal, defiance, and a love so powerful it brought someone back from the edge of nothingness. Stay with me, because once you hear what David said, you'll never forget it. The first time Olivia Hart saw the Langston estate, it didn't feel like a place where someone lived. It felt like a place where someone had vanished. The iron gates loomed tall and black against the foggy morning sky of Westbridge Hills, the kind of sky that made you feel like something had been buried in the air long before you arrived. The guard barely acknowledged her as she passed her red Vespa, sputtering one last breath before falling silent. This wasn't just a new job. It was the beginning of something she couldn't yet name, but could feel in her bones. Olivia had graduated from nursing school only weeks ago, but this was not the kind of assignment they trained her for. David Langston, once a revered tech tycoon and one of the youngest billionaires in Boston, was now a shell of a man after a catastrophic car crash left him in a persistent vegetative state. The tragedy had made headlines. The twist: his wife, Vanessa Blake, had walked away from the wreck without a scratch. Some said David had turned the wheel at the last second to shield her from the brunt of the impact. Others whispered that the crash was no accident, that she had married for power, for inheritance, for control. Olivia wasn't here to entertain gossip, but the air inside that mansion was so heavy it reeked of untold stories. She was greeted at the door by Grace Nolan, the housekeeper, a woman in her 50s with tired eyes and the kind of posture that said she'd carried the weight of this house for too long. "Upstairs, 3rd floor." "End of the hall," Grace said curtly, her voice as polished as the marble floors Olivia's boots squeaked across. "And one thing, don't try to talk to Mrs. Blake unless she speaks to you first." Grace turned and disappeared, her presence swallowed by the endless corridors of the estate. Olivia climbed the crimson-carpeted staircase, each step echoing in a silence that didn't feel peaceful, it felt deliberate. At the end of the long hallway, she opened the door to the master suite. The room was massive. Vaulted ceilings, gilded molding velvet curtains drawn halfway to let in the pale morning light. But none of it held a candle to the man lying in the center of the room. David Langston. He was pale, too still, his once vibrant face now void of expression of presence of life. He lay beneath crisp white sheets surrounded by softly beeping machines that served as a constant reminder that his heart still beat, but that didn't mean he was living. Olivia's hands trembled as she set her bag down beside the bed. She adjusted her gloves and began with the basics: cleaning his skin, checking his vitals, gently rotating his limbs to prevent atrophy. But beneath each action, her thoughts churned. This man had once commanded rooms full of executives. He'd funded hospitals, built scholarships, spoken at Ivy League universities. Now he was nothing more than a burden to the woman who once stood by his side. Her thoughts were interrupted by the door swinging open. A sharp perfume wafted into the room before the woman did. Vanessa Blake, late 20s, impossibly beautiful, dressed for a gala, not a hospital. Her heels clicked across the marble floor as she wrinkled her nose. "Oh, God. The smell in here is appalling," she said, waving her manicured hand in front of her face. "I swear if someone doesn't change him soon, I'll start charging hazard pay." Olivia stood, maintaining her composure. "I was just finishing the cleaning, Mrs. Blake." Vanessa raised an eyebrow and gave her a quick once-over. "You're the new nurse, right, Olivia something?" "Yes, ma'am, Olivia Hart." "Well, Olivia, just do what you're paid to do. Don't ask questions. And for the love of all things sacred, don't start acting like this is your patient." With that, she turned on her heel and swept out of the room, her presence leaving behind nothing but a trail of indifference. That night, Olivia sat by David's bedside long after her shift ended. The house was silent, but his breathing shallow, rhythmic pulled her in. She reached out and took his hand in hers. "I don't know if you can hear me," she whispered, "but I believe someone's still in there. And I'm not going to treat you like you're already gone." She stayed that way for over an hour, just holding his hand, just being present, something no one else in this house seemed willing to do. The next day, she searched his files and found something, a note from a former assistant. David loved Russian blue cats, said they reminded him of his childhood. He also used to ride horses competitively before college. That evening after her shift, she did something reckless. She spent her entire savings to purchase a rare Russian blue kitten from a local breeder. She named him Leo. That night, Olivia tiptoed into David's room with Leo curled under her coat. She set the kitten gently on his chest, where it nestled, purring into the warmth of his unmoving body. And that's when it happened. A tear, one single tear, slipped from the corner of David Langston's eye. Olivia gasped. It wasn't much, but it was more than anything anyone else had seen in 3 months. She leaned closer. "You remember, don't you? You remember Leo. You remember something." Her heart thundered in her chest as she realized David wasn't gone. He was waiting for someone to fight for him, and she would. She didn't care what Vanessa Blake said. She didn't care if she got fired, ridiculed, or ignored. David Langston had just whispered his first silent word. "Hope. I'm so sorry to stop here, but I promise you the storm is only beginning to rise. Let me ask you something. If you were Olivia, would you have risked everything to sneak that kitten into the room? And do you think David's tear was a memory or a goodbye? Tell me where in the world you're watching from, and if this story touched you, please tap that heart and give this video a like. Every bit of support keeps stories like this alive. The next morning, Olivia barely slept a minute. She kept replaying the moment in her mind, David's tear, the flicker of something ancient and human, the sound of Leo's gentle purring, anchoring the impossible. But if hope had crept into the room quietly, danger was waiting outside the door with heels and lipstick. She slipped into the kitchen at dawn, tying her apron before the chef even arrived. Olivia had spent the entire night studying digestive health, inflammation, neurological recovery, micronutrients, and now with trembling hands and a heart full of grit, she blended ingredients into a nutrient-rich mix for David. If there was even a sliver of a chance to help him, she would take it. She had just placed the finished blend onto a tray when the door swung open hard enough to rattle the pans. Mrs. Lorraine Baxter, the mansion's longtime chef, stood in the doorway like a storm cloud. Middle-aged, iron-jawed arms crossed like steel beams. "What do you think you're doing in my kitchen?" she barked. Olivia turned, lifting her chin. "Preparing breakfast for Mr. Langston." Lorraine's lips curled. "No one touches a stove in this house but me." "I respect that," Olivia said gently. "But this isn't just food. It's medicine. He needs something different, something targeted, and I can't wait for permission while his body forgets how to heal." The room fell silent. Then unexpectedly, Lorraine stepped aside. "Then you'd better not mess it up." Minutes later, Olivia was seated beside David again. The sun peeked through the curtains as she adjusted his bed, gently lifting his head. She took a spoonful of the warm mixture and brought it to his lips. He didn't respond. "Come on," she whispered. "Just a little." A twitch, a slow swallow, then another. Tears blurred Olivia's eyes. "That's it, David. You're still with me." But the peace shattered that afternoon when Vanessa Blake barged into the room without warning. She was dressed like she was late for a red carpet, not visiting her unconscious husband. "What is going on in here?" she snapped, noticing the empty bowl and the kitten curled beside David's arm. Olivia's body stiffened. "I was feeding him." Vanessa's eyes narrowed at Leo. "And what is that thing doing here?" He's helping, Olivia said carefully. "David used to love Russian blues. It made him react." "React," Vanessa scoffed. "You're paid to clean and monitor vitals, not play Dr. Doolittle with my husband." Olivia took a step forward. "With all due respect, something is happening. His body is responding. Slowly, but it's real." Vanessa's voice went ice cold. "Remove the cat, now. And if you defy me again, I'll remove you." That night, Olivia didn't cry. She planned. She remembered something else from the files. David had been passionate about horses. He used to ride in private exhibitions, even competed before college. That passion wasn't a footnote, it was a lifeline. And maybe, just maybe, it could be the shock his spirit needed. The next morning, she contacted a local horse trainer and emptied her bank account again. It wasn't enough. So she did something she swore she never would. She made a deal with the devil. She offered a bribe to the mansion's gatekeeper, a man who grinned far too wide and asked for more than money. Her stomach turned, but she endured it. She didn't do it for herself. She did it for him. 3 days later, the show began. Olivia wheeled David out to the garden, dressed him in a warm sweater, and secured his neck with careful hands. The morning light danced through the trees, the grass glistening like it had waited too for this day. Then came the sound of hooves. A tall, black, Frisian stallion stepped into the clearing. The trainer rode with grace, his motions smooth and theatrical, drawing elegant circles as if painting the air itself. David, Olivia whispered, her voice shaking. Do you remember this? This was your world. But David didn't move. She swallowed hard, panic rising. Maybe this had been a mistake. Then came Vanessa's shriek from the balcony. What the hell is this? She stormed down the steps, fury in every step. Who authorized this? You, this is insane. Get him inside right now. I did it, Olivia replied, stepping in front of David's chair. I did it because he needs this. And I think he knows it. Vanessa's voice cracked with rage. You're fired. But Olivia wasn't listening. She turned toward the trainer and yelled, dismount. Now, he blinked. What? Get off the horse. I'm riding. The guests, Vanessa, the maid, the chef, even Grace froze. What do you know about horses? The trainer mocked. Olivia's jaw tightened. Everything. She mounted with astonishing ease. My grandfather raised me on a ranch, she said, turning to the stunned faces. He taught me how to ride, how to stand tall, how to never let anyone tell me I wasn't enough. And then she rode, fast, graceful, spiraling into the open field like a storm chaser with fire in her veins. She spun the stallion until it reared its hooves, flashing skyward. She turned toward David, tears streaking her face. David Langston, she screamed. Today marks 3 months since the accident. They said after today you'd never come back. But I don't believe that. So if there's anything left inside of you, fight. Come back. For me. Silence. Then a sound. Soft. Hoarse. Like gravel being scraped from a canyon. Ma! Heads turned. Vanessa gasped. Did he just… Ma… Ria? But his eyes weren't on her. They were on Olivia. Maria. Olivia. Vanessa's face turned white. The impossible had begun. I'm so sorry to stop the story here, but we're just crossing the line between impossible and undeniable. Tell me, if you were Olivia, would you have gotten on that horse? And do you think Vanessa deserves redemption or something else? Comment below and let me know what country you're watching from. And if this story touched your heart, please give it a like and drop a heart. Your support brings every word to life. For a long, breathless moment, no one moved. David Langston's voice, raspy, broken, barely more than a whisper, had cracked through the silence like a thunderclap. But it wasn't just what he said, it was who he said it to. Olivia. Her name, torn from lips that hadn't moved in 3 months, echoed like a miracle. Vanessa Blake staggered back a step, her face draining of color. Did he? He said her name. Yes, Olivia, whispered, stunned. Her heart raced, but her soul felt still, anchored in a moment that had just rewritten everything. He remembers. Vanessa turned to the housekeeper, to the chef, to anyone who would deny what she just heard. But the truth was plain on every face. And David, his eyes cloudy but focused, blinked again, slow, intentional, and tried to speak once more. Yeah. Vanessa lost control. This is absurd. He's confused. It's neurological noise. That doesn't mean… But David's hand twitched, not toward Vanessa, toward Olivia. It wasn't much, but it was enough. Olivia ran to his side, took his trembling fingers in hers, and looked straight into his eyes. I'm here, she said softly. I never left. Vanessa's voice, shrill and desperate, cut through the moment. That's it. I want him moved to a facility, the best in the world. I've already made the arrangements. Your job here is done, Nurse Hart. You've been dismissed. But before anyone could react, David exhaled deeply and muttered, No! The word was barely there, but it silenced the entire terrace. Vanessa stared. What did you say? David's gaze, though heavy with exhaustion, was unshakable now. No, Vanessa, go! It was the first command he had spoken since the accident. Vanessa stepped back like she'd been slapped. You can't mean that. I'm your wife, I stayed. You waited for me to die. David said clearer this time. She waited for me to live. For a moment the air trembled. Then Vanessa's composure cracked. She let out a bitter laugh, shook her head and said, Fine, if that's how it is, keep your little nurse. But I'll be gone, and taking what's mine. She stormed back toward the mansion, heels clacking like the last desperate beats of an ending performance. What she didn't know was that the prenuptial agreement David had drawn up years ago, ironclad fair, and quietly protected by trusted legal counsel, would leave her with little more than the clothes she arrived in. And she knew it. Over the next few weeks, David's recovery became a beacon of defiance against hopelessness. With Olivia by his side day and night, he slowly began to move more intentionally, speak clearer, and even smile those faint, honest smiles that no one had seen in years. It wasn't just the therapy. It wasn't just the science. It was love. Gentle, patient, and unwavering. They read poetry in the evenings, took sunrises together in silence. Leo, the Russian blue, never left his side. And with every touch, every word, every shared look, the man the world thought was lost found his way back. A year later, on a warm spring afternoon, a small group gathered in the garden of the Langston estate, no longer a place of shadows but of rebirth. David sat in his new motorized wheelchair, dressed in a sharp navy suit. Olivia stood beside him in a soft ivory dress, holding a bouquet of wildflowers. I used to think my life ended the day of that crash, David said to the guests, his voice now clear, thanks to a speech device paired with months of therapy. But it didn't. It paused. And while I lay still, the world moved on. Except one person who chose to stay behind and wait with me. He turned to Olivia. You gave me back my voice, my body, my reason to breathe. Will you stay beside me, not as my nurse, but as my wife? Olivia smiled through tears. There's nowhere else I'd rather be. They exchanged vows under the same oak tree where David had first spoken her name again. Grace Nolan wept silently. Even Lorraine Baxter dabbed her eyes behind a tray of lemon cake. And as they kissed, the guests rose to their feet, not out of politeness, but because they had witnessed something rare. Not a wedding. A resurrection. In the months that followed, David and Olivia launched the Langston Renewal Foundation, funding rehabilitation centers across the country for people with severe brain injuries. Their story inspired thousands of families who had lost hope, patients long considered unreachable, nurses who needed a reason to keep trying. Olivia's love had crossed into a soul that couldn't speak, couldn't move, couldn't respond. And still she chose to stay. Because sometimes the ones who listen when you cannot speak, who see you, when the world has forgotten, those are the ones who bring you back to life. Now, I hate to pause here, but this is the end of their story and maybe the beginning of someone else's. Tell me, do you believe love alone can truly bring someone back from the edge? And what would you have done in Olivia's place? Would you have stayed or walked away? What do you think of this story? Comment number 3 if you loved it. Number 1 if it didn't quite connect with you, and number 2 if you felt it was just okay. Also, let me know where in the world you're watching from. If this story touched you, please, send a heart and share it with someone who might need to hear it today.